Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage, my babies. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 39, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is early Friday morning, April 13th of Friday the 13th, and I am in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama, just so I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. It has been a minute, my babies. It has been a minute, my tools. Been getting a lot of emails, a lot of DMs on Twitter, saying, "Hey, where's the show been?" It's been about 3 weeks now since we have put out an episode. That is not what we are shooting for. We aim for one episode a week. But sometimes life is busy, and sometimes life is difficult. On our last episode, episode 38, if you haven't heard that one yet, go back and listen to the intro of the show. I talked a lot about gratitude, and I talked about how gratitude is a discipline that we can choose to practice. Ever since I said those words out loud, I sure have had the opportunity to practice the discipline of gratitude in some difficult times. Life has just been interesting the last couple weeks, been busy. Had some health complications, nothing too serious, I don't think yet. But some complications. Had a couple things that didn't go my way personally. Some things that happened in the life of people I care about that has been difficult for them to manage. And so my attention has just been elsewhere. I haven't forgot about you. I've been keeping up with the news. I'm excited about this show. But that's the reason why there has been a couple weeks where we have not put out an episode. And a lot has happened. A lot has happened in the last 3 weeks. Just to give you an idea, an illustration, if you will, of how long it has been since we have recorded an episode. These are things that have happened just between episode 38 of the show and episode 39. The New York Times has come out with an article saying that masks are only effective if it's a quality mask. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we knew that like a year ago, but thank you, New York Times. Also, masks are no longer required on airplanes. Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage in Los Angeles, and homie that attacked him is not even being charged because they don't prosecute misdemeanors in the city of Los Angeles. The war in Ukraine is still going on. Elon Musk has decided to buy Twitter, and they're in negotiations. It has not yet been finalized. There's apparently a baby formula shortage in our great nation, and 2 more Nessie spottings have happened. So yeah, all that has happened in the last 3 weeks. It's been a busy 3 weeks, hasn't it? Yeah, and it's not just that stuff either. I've had a couple of life-transforming incidents that have happened in our family. Would you like to hear about them, my tools? Would you like for me to give you a window into my life the last few weeks? My daughter had her 6th birthday here a few weeks ago, And as her last birthday present, her daddy promised her a fish tank. Yeah, we always had a large fish aquarium in my house when I was growing up, and I always enjoyed it. I've always wanted to provide that same experience for my children, and I thought, when better to do so than my daughter's 6th birthday? So together we go to PetSmart, which I have learned is not, as I always thought it was, PetSmart, a mart for pets. No, it is PetSmart. And the best I can tell, the reason why it is called PetSmart is because if you go there looking to acquire a pet, the employees will be smart with you. Did you know that it is very, very difficult to procure fish from PetSmart? I did not know this, but I have since learned this fact of life. Now understand that I am not a crazy person, okay? I might play one on the podcast, but I'm a sensible, reasonable individual. I was not expecting to go to the PetSmart and get a whole bunch of large fish that require expertise and stick them in a tank together and hope for the best. I was going in for the beginner fish, okay? Just a handful of them, 4 or 5 beginner fish that I could put in a little aquarium to make my daughter happy. I'm talking the $2.99 a piece fish. And PetSmart said, no fish for you. We do not believe that you are a proper fish father. This young man who, I'm not an old fella myself, but this young man had to have been about 8 or 10 years younger than I. He was walking with a very stylish cane. I don't know if he just has swagger like that or if he needed it, but he reminded me of the guy on Jurassic Park, okay? And he's like, sir, can I help you? And I said, yes, you can. We've got a little fish aquarium at the house. I would like to purchase the following 3 or 4 fish to put in an aquarium. Immediately, this man starts shaking his head no at me, which is very confusing because there are very few places that I have walked into and attempted to spend my money, and they have just said, no. And I said, is there a problem? And Dinosaur Man says to me, I cannot sell you these fish, sir. And I'm like, sure you can. Take my debit card. I've got plenty. He says, no, sir. You see, in order to have those 4 fish, you must have at least a 10-gallon tank. Mind you, these are fish that are under an inch in size. And I'm like, a 10-gallon tank, is that right? Oh, yes, sir. They have to be in a 10-gallon tank. I said, but you've got about 45 of them in a 5-gallon tank in front of me right now. And it's about 4 dead ones floating in there that ain't been cleaned out. He did not like that answer. He said, sir, I will not sell you these fish today. You need a bigger tank. If you would like, you may have 1 betta fish. My daughter does not want a betta fish. She wants the 4 fish that we have picked out. So I did the reasonable thing, and I said, okay, you trying to keep me from having these fish? I got to have a 10-gallon aquarium. I'm about to one-up you. I'm going to buy the 29-gallon aquarium. Now sell me my 4 fish. Sir, I cannot sell you these fish. Well, why can't you sell me these fish? He says, in order for me to sell these fish to you, you have to first go home, set up your aquarium, fill it with water, put in the proper chemicals, and let it sit for about 48 hours to make sure that these 4 fish that are $2.99 a piece are safe. I said, well, good news for you. I already have an aquarium set up at home that they can stay in until I'm able to furnish them the home that they deserve in this 29-gallon aquarium. He says, sir, these fish cannot go in your 5-gallon aquarium that you've already admitted to me that you own. So I left PetSmart without fish that day. But I had the 29-gallon aquarium. And I wish all of you could have seen my wife's face, expecting that I was taking my daughter to get 3 or 4 fish to put in our small aquarium, and instead your boy walks through the front door with a 29-gallon aquarium on his shoulder. Our marriage is still okay, but that's just because my wife is a very understanding lady. So I tell my daughter this is a part of life. Sometimes we don't get what we want right away. You know, good father trying to make it into a teaching, learning situation over here, over this way. So together we set up the aquarium. We wait the 48 hours. I go back in. Same little dinosaur man, and I learned then the second time I don't really think he needs the cane for any purposes because he did not have it with him. I think that was just his style in the first particular visit. And Dinosaur Man says to me, can I help you? Like he has never seen me before. I'm like, yes, you can. I'm here for my 4 fish. $2.99 each. My daughter has selected them. These are the ones that we would like. His head shakes. No. Sir, I cannot sell you fish today. To say that I was frustrated would be like saying Shaq is tall. Okay, this is my daughter's birthday gift. This is my second visit to the PetSmart. They will not sell me fish. I said, what's the problem? I've got the 29-gallon tank. They will fit in there. These 4 fish will have plenty of space to live their life to the fullest. I got the water conditioned and set up. He said, well, how do I know that, sir? Because I'm telling you that I have it set up. Meanwhile, people all around me are walking in the store and leaving with fish. I saw a 14-year-old who was by himself without an adult walk away with some expert-level fish. I am starting to believe that this is a personal vendetta against me and my daughter's birthday. He says to me, I cannot sell you these fish unless I know that they will be taken good care of. So in order for you to get these fish, sir, I need you to go home and bring back a sample of the water so that we can test it and make sure that the fish will live a happy and safe life. I left the store without fish. Mind you, my 6-year-old is pretty disappointed at this point. It's not like I could be a Patricia or a Karen and go talk to the manager because there only happened to be 2 people working in the store that day. And one of them told me he could not leave the register to help me, and the other one was the aforementioned Dinosaur Man. So on visit 3 to the store, I bring back the water sample a couple days later. And he does his little thing with a little test kit. He swabs it in the water. He goes, he looks, he studies the colors, he analyzes. He comes back to me. He says, sir, this looks good, this looks good, this looks good. Everything looks good. I said, fantastic. I would like these 4 fish that my daughter had picked out for $2.99 a piece. His head is shaking. No. Sir, I cannot give you any fish today. I'm not a violent man, okay? I wanted to throat punch the young man. Like, hey, this is my daughter's birthday present. Give me some fish. Like, we about to throw hands. I carry a pocket full of sand for a reason. I'm about to take you out. I need some fish. Give me the fish. Why can you not sell me the fish? Well, sir, everything tested great about your water except for the alkalinity. The alkalinity is the problem. You need to fix the alkalinity. I don't even know what that means. This is water from the tap, okay? I drink this water. This water hasn't killed me yet. We don't live in Flint, Michigan. What is the problem? Why can't a fish can't live in the water that doesn't harm me? Like, what is the deal here? How do I fix alkalinity in the water? I don't know, sir. Go to the aisle. There may be a chemical you can buy. I did not buy the chemical. Instead, I spent $24.99 on my very own test strips. And I outsmarted the Dinosaur Man that day. And I went home and I adjusted the water. I did a water change. I added the chemicals. I waited. I did the test with the strips. Everything was okay. So I took my results back on a 4th visit. And finally, my daughter was able to have her birthday fish, all 4 of them, for $2.99 a piece. PetSmart is called PetSmart because if you try to acquire a pet, them folk gonna get real smart with you. And I think next time I will go somewhere else to purchase my fish. I don't know why it was so difficult. I'm a good fish father. I try to learn. I try to take good care of the fish. I enjoy watching them. It is relaxing. But what is not relaxing is going to buy them from PetSmart. It was a terrible, terrible experience. The other thing that has happened has been life-changing for your boy is that my son turned 2. He did. Little man turned 2. I got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. And the day before his birthday, it was my day off, and he was home with me that day. And I went to get him up for school, get him ready, take him to preschool. I walk in his room. I flip on the light switch. I said, "Good morning, handsome boy." And he stands up in his crib and says, "Daddy, Daddy," and lifts his hands up to me. Poo-poo on the hands. And I mean poo-poo caked on the hands. I mean between the fingers. And it was a crime scene. The man had taken his pajamas and his diaper off, okay? There was poop on the crib, on his toys. The Incredible Hulk action figure was looking at me like, "Help me." It was smeared on the side of his crib. It was on his little feet and in between his toes. And I wanted to check my homeowner's insurance policy and see if my house burned down, if I was insured, because it was by far the most disgusting moment of my parenthood, of my parent career. 6 years in the game, this one about took me out, okay? I bathed him. I bathed him like a good father. I bathed him about 4 times. I scrubbed his little feet, his hands, washed his head 3 or 4 times, made sure that he was clean, took him to school, came back, and drowned the entire room in bleach. And I scrubbed the bars of the crib. I washed all of the sheets. And then I went and took a shower myself. And by the time I got done with all of this, it was 11:30 in the afternoon. That's how long the whole first half of my day was cleaning up the incident that had occurred that morning. And I wasn't mad at the boy. It wasn't his fault. I had heard him awake in his crib. I didn't go get him because I was trying to prepare his lunch, pack his lunch for the day first. I learned a valuable lesson. But I also learned that I could clean up after a murder. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it was the most disgusting thing that I've ever witnessed, and I had the ability to just step in there and clean it up without getting sick, without it causing me anything other than some frustration. It was gross, but I did it. And I'm just saying, I'm fairly confident I could clean up a murder scene. So yeah, bought some fishes, cleaned up some poop. Sure miss being with you guys. And we've got a great show for you tonight. No comments or corrections this week, so let's get straight into some listener emails. Our first email comes from friend of the show, Bigfoot Bob, over in Texas. Bob writes, "Wes, I love this show. I don't really watch the news much, so you are my source for politics and sports." Hey, I appreciate that, Bob. I'm the people's champ. The people have already said I am a journalist, and I just, I'm going to roll with it. Maybe don't make me your sole source for politics and sports, but hey, I will carry the mantle of being your main source, Bob, because I got your back, big dog. Enjoyed your talk about comics. The storyline you're referring to about the X-Men resurrecting the dead is House X and Powers X, written by Jonathan Hickman. It's a great storyline and well written. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you always supporting the show, being a good friend. Y'all check out Bob's podcast, Bigfoot Club. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. And appreciate the info about that comic book. Yeah, that was a really interesting story. I'm going to have to look into that. Our next email comes from Naomi from Oklahoma, who says, Wes, just wanted to thank you for covering Native news and stories. I don't see that in many places, and I hope that you will continue doing so. You're welcome, Naomi. Yeah, I will. I sure will. I find that very interesting. I love Native American culture, Native American history. And I agree. It's news for that slice of the populace and for our First Peoples does not get covered by mainstream media very much. But that's the beauty of In the Shed with Wes Anderson. We are not mainstream. We swimming upstream. We going to bring you the news that other people forget. So we will continue bringing that to you, Naomi. Thank you for writing into the show. And finally, Malcolm from Georgia writes, just subscribed to the newsletter. Looking forward to receiving the first one on Monday. Hey, thank you very much, Malcolm. Yeah, if you didn't know, we have an In the Shed with Wes Anderson newsletter. It's starting to build some momentum. We've got about 13 or 14 people who are subscribing to it. It's a great way to keep up with the show in between episodes, to keep up with the news that you're missing elsewhere, to get an inside look at how we do things and why here on In the Shed. And it's only $4 a month, $1 a week. It's just one less Starbucks coffee a month, my babies. And it helps us keep that 50-foot extension cord plugged in, helps us pay for the software that we need and keep the lights on here in the shed. I would love for you to be a part of it. If you want to join and sign up for the newsletter like Malcolm did to subscribe, all you have to do is email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at intheshed4, and I'd be glad to give you instructions on how to send payment and get signed up for the show. We take both Cash App and PayPal, so you'll need one of those two to help. And the other way that you can support the show financially is by downloading the Mercari app. That's MERCARI, looking for our In the Shed account and buying some of our stuff. We got all kinds of cool vintage and collectible items. Send us a message before purchasing and tell us that you listen to the show. We'll even give you a 10% discount. So those are the two ways to support the show financially and help us continue to grow. Sign up for the newsletter, become an insider, and find us on the Mercari app and buy something from us there. We certainly would appreciate it. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. Project Veritas, whistleblower says FBI targeting media, writes Breitbart. Biden admin scraps oil gas lease sales in Alaska and Gulf of Mexico, reports the Washington Examiner. Deaths from COVID begin to rise again, says Axios. From The Guardian, Biden says U.S. farmers can help in an inflation fight as food prices continue to soar. And finally, Washington can't seem to break its war addiction, and that is according to The Nation. Our first story in the world of politics, CNN Plus shutdown leaves ACT staffers aghast and furious. And for some reason, the picture on this article, by the way, I have to share this with you, is a group of corgis. The picture associated with the article about CNN Plus shutting down mere weeks after launching is a group of about 15 corgis. Little frou-frou, barky-bark corgi dogs. And I don't get the joke. And yet I find it to be hilarious. I digress. The shocking announcement that CNN Plus would be shutting down operations less than a month after it launched has left out-of-work staffers aghast and furious over the company's handling of what sources inside the network call an absolute debacle. This is knucking futs, a CNN insider told the Post. And In the Shed with Wes Anderson is a family show, so I've swapped around a couple of syllables. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllables for a reason there, but you could probably deduce what the insider told the Post. This literally rivals the epic disaster of Quibi, the insider said, referring to Jeffrey Katzenberg's short-lived streaming platform that went out of business 7 months after it launched in April 2020. CNN Plus, which one insider estimated the network spent $300 million launching and between $100 and $200 million advertising, will cease streaming for good at the end of the month. All the CNN talent were basically doing double duty. Don Lemon just announced his show a few days ago, one staffer lamented. But the writing was on the wall when CNN Plus advertising was pulled a few days ago. Chris Licht, CNN's newly installed CEO who replaced the disgraced Jeff Zucker, broke the news to staffers at a noon meeting in New York. Network insiders were horrified to learn that all junior staffers at the streaming service were let go. The roughly 300 staffers were offered 6 months severance as well as first dibs on job opportunities with CNN, according to sources. CNN Plus's big-ticket acquisitions, meanwhile, including former Fox News star Chris Wallace and ex-MSNBC reporter Casey Hunt, are expected to be reassigned to the cable news mothership or to other platforms within the Warner Brothers Discovery media empire. Sources told the Post that CNN overspent on talent by giving Wallace a $9 million a year contract while Hunt was lured away from MSNBC with an annual paycheck of $1 million. Hunt paid tribute to the world-class journalists at CNN Plus by tweeting, "I'm so incredibly proud to be able to call them colleagues." I guess that should be in the past tense, Casey. She tweeted out that her new job for the foreseeable future would be to help laid-off staffers find work elsewhere. "If your organization would like a chance to benefit from their talents, my DMs are open," Hunt tweeted. With CNN Plus shutting down, the prevailing sentiment in the newsroom is that Wallace will likely take over Chris Cuomo's old 9 p.m. time slot. The Post has reached out to Wallace seeking comment. "The big people will likely be saved, but what about everybody else? The people who do the real work," the insider told the Post. "The producers, the showrunners, some will get 6 months severance, others will not." Insiders fumed at the corporate suits at Warner Brothers Discovery laid off staffers so soon after the streaming service started operations. "Many people left their stable jobs at CNN to go to CNN Plus, and they pull it right after launch," the source said. "Everyone is aghast and furious." Employees are also nursing resentment toward their new boss, Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav, because he recently led workers to believe that he would be giving CNN Plus a chance, according to the insider. The irony is that Zaslav came in a few weeks ago and told CNN Plus staff that they would soon be running the world, ahead of CNN anchors on TV, the source said. Is this the way that David Zaslav operates? The source said CNN should have kept to its bread-and-butter 24 hours news operation rather than venture into the streaming space. CNN should have just stuck to what they do well, which is hard news, not Anderson Cooper giving parenting advice, the insider said. "I might have declined to pay for it, but I would have tuned in if it could have been on an app to see live TV. CNN Plus's demise has been in the news," another source said. The bigger question is, why did Warner Brothers CEO Jason Kilar and CNN boss Jeff Zucker keep moving with this? They could have punted it. After Zaslav took over the newly merged entity that combined Discovery with Warner's media, it became clear that CNN would shift away from its opinion-dominated programming and more toward straight reporting. Given what the new mandate is, which is hard news, why would you have decided the CNN Plus programming would be an effective streaming network, the insider said. A source close to Discovery said new management reviewed CNN Plus's numbers once the merger between Warner Media and Discovery closed earlier this month. They realized that CNN Plus's massive $1 billion investment wouldn't justify its subscriber growth. These kinds of vertices don't scale, the source said, noting that Discovery has experience launching streaming services across its various channels. The company's long-term broader strategy is to merge the Discovery Plus streaming service with that of HBO Max. So, you mean to tell me that CNN Plus, which received total investment of almost $1 billion, folded after a month? Folded after a month. Excuse me while I fire up the world's tiniest violin for all of you at CNN Plus. I don't know how long you've been listening to the show. Maybe this is your first time tuning in. But hey, we told you months ago that this was a terrible, terrible idea and would be a failure as a business venture. CNN is struggling in the ratings as it is for free. And they had the audacity to think, hey, but maybe people want to pay for even more boring content. They thought, the geniuses at CNN thought, do you know what the world is really hungering for? A Don Lemon book club. Look, if y'all passing out billion-dollar investments, I got a show for you. It's a small show. It's recorded in a backyard shed. But it has sustained an audience for a lot longer than CNN Plus did, and is growing week to week. And I would even venture that we do a better job of presenting the news than your people over there at CNN Plus. And the article that I just read for you, it continues to quote an inside source who obviously has an axe to grind. Let me just call a spade a spade. It was Chris Cuomo. The inside source, I'm just telling you, I don't know, but I know. I don't have a feeling. I'm not saying, but I'm saying the inside source had to have been Christopher Matthew Cuomo. So, yeah, CNN Plus, they threw a giant party, a launch party in New York City. They rented out a fancy rooftop bar, invited a lot of celebrities. They spent a few $100 million on advertising, and they have folded up their tent in a month. And I could have saved them a lot of money because I told them this is a bad idea. And I hope that their new president, I hope that he does return to hard news. I hope that he does kind of get rid of some of the fluff and the hyper-partisanship that is taking over, not just at CNN, but in cable news as a whole. But yeah, CNN Plus was a failure. We told you, we had that on In the Shed with Wes. We don't always get everything right, but that one we did. And if you subscribed, I am sorry. I hope you get your money back. CNN Plus is a goner. And those who used to work there are aghast. They're aghast. They're horrified. And I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry. Our second story in the world of politics, state audits reveal more significant deficiencies in Chilton County school finances. All the attention on Chilton County Board of Education's finances over the past month have focused on overpayments to a number of employees. School leaders say the workers must pay back tens of thousands of dollars for the accounting errors. ABC 3340's I-Team dug deeper into the system's state audits over the past 3 years conducted by the Department of Examiners of Public Accounts and have uncovered more troubling findings. Among the other findings in the 2019-2020 report, there was no complete and accurate physical inventory of school property exposing assets to loss or theft, inadequate internal controls over approval of timesheets, receipt procedures were not followed at local schools and athletic events. One example cited was missing teacher receipt books. ABC 3340 News tried repeatedly to reach Superintendent Jason Griffin for comment, including 4 phone calls, 3 emails, and an in-person visit to the board office, but have received no response from him. We also tried calling board president Pam Price, but have yet to hear back. The 2018-2019 audit revealed transactions not properly recorded totaling $260,000, receipt book procedures again not followed at local schools, numerous expenditures not properly approved or documented. And more red flags from the 2017-2018 examination include questions about the accuracy of financial statements, fundraising procedures not followed, and failure to comply with the bid law when purchasing vehicles. We spoke with Chief Examiner Rachel Riddle with the Department of Examiners of Public Accounts. She describes her office's role as non-political. Riddle does not comment on specific findings, but she did speak with us in general terms out of the work of her team. We're out in the community every day, says Chief Examiner Riddle. Anything dealing with public funds, we have authority to go over and check. Annual audits by her office are done on over 1,000 agencies from the state down to county governments, and when called on, even small towns or the local sports league can face an audit. Build safeguards. Build safeguards is very important, advises Riddle. We asked her about issues that carry over and are not corrected. A lot of instances you will see reported year after year, then 5 years potentially something criminal happens, explains Riddle. Riddle urges the public to call her office if they notice anything suspicious. Please contact and report anything if you have any uneasy feeling when dealing with a public entity. That's what we're here for, says Riddle. While her office often works behind the scenes, they're often involved with law enforcement on cases. Now, at this point, you may be wondering to yourself, why is Wes Anderson talking about a place called Chilton County that I am unfamiliar with? Why has this been selected to be one of the news stories that he covers on this week's show? Well, the reason is because our humble little show is based in the state of Alabama, where Chilton County can be found in the center of the state between Montgomery and Birmingham. And also because the town of Clanton, the county seat of that county, happens to be my hometown. Yeah, Clanton, Alabama, that's where I'm from. And this is happening in my old stomping grounds, even at my old high school. Clanton, Alabama, or as the old heads call it, Clantern. So, all of this came to light a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when a lunchroom worker received a letter from the Chilton County Board of Education and the superintendent, Jason Griffin, stating that there had been an accounting error, and that over the course of a couple years she had accidentally been overpaid by thousands of dollars. This overpayment was over the course of months and months, so it wasn't very much per paycheck, and the school employee had no idea that it was even happening in the first place. It wasn't her error, it was an error made by those in the accounting department, yet they had the audacity to tell her that she had to repay the thousands of dollars, which, like most of us, she does not have in her pocket. And that if she did not agree to do so, there would be legal action taken to ensure that she paid the money back. So that in and of itself is at least shady and immoral behavior. Like, hey, I'm not a lawyer. It might hold up if challenged in court, but just because it is legal does not make it right. And if the error was made in the accounting department, it sounds to me like some people in the accounting department need to lose their jobs. Not the lunchroom lady have to pay back thousands of dollars. That's absurd. But all of the attention focused on this one news story has resulted in people taking a closer look at the finances of the school board and at the job of the superintendent himself. And this is of interest to me, not just because I graduated from that high school, lettered 4 years there in basketball, was a 3.7 GPA student, and a volunteer member of the National Honor Society. Wasn't in the National Honor Society, but when they had meetings, I would leave class and I would go be a part of the meetings. And not only am I interested because I graduated from high school there, as did my siblings, but because I know the superintendent, Jason Griffin. When I was in high school at Chilton County High School many moons ago, Jason Griffin worked at the school. He actually would ride the bus to away basketball games sometimes. And I always thought him to be a nice man. Full disclosure, I would not have voted for him for superintendent if I still lived in the town because I thought the person he ran against was a more experienced and better candidate. But he won the job. He won the race. He got the big boy chair and the office and the title. And now under his watch, there are a lot of questions about procedures, about finances, about decision making, and about the way the educators and teachers who are already underpaid and overworked are being treated in the school system. And what sticks in my craw and grinds my gears about this particular story is not just the absurdity of teachers and lunchroom ladies and PE coaches being asked to pay back thousands of dollars that they were given in $200 increments over the course of many, many, many months because of an accounting error. But the fact that when audits were done, there were a number of problems over the course of years. And when contacted over the phone, by email, and in person, the man in charge and the school board president are nowhere to be found. They got nothing to say. They have no answers. And I might be old-fashioned in this regard, but I believe that the buck stops with the person who is in charge. If you have the big chair, if you have the paycheck, the title, and the office, if there are problems, they are your problems. And if nothing else, you should stand before the public and answer for what has been going on under your leadership. And at least as of yet, Jason Griffin has failed to do that. And based on my Facebook feed, a few thousand people that I'm still friends with from my hometown, people have begun to notice. And his professional reputation has taken a hit. And to me, this is indicative of problems that we see not just at the local level, but state and national level government as a whole, where those who are elected to hold positions refuse to answer for the problems in their departments. When they make campaign promises, when they talk about transparency, when they ask you for your vote, but then are nowhere to be found when things aren't going well. And if Jason Griffin wants to come on this show and answer some of these questions, hey, the people online have said that I'm a journalist. I'll be glad to have him on the show. He can call into the shed anytime, and we'll chop it up. Like I said, the man has always been good to me personally, but professionally, it appears that he has some work to do. Don't make this lady pay back all this money that you gave her by mistake. She probably scraping by to afford gas and groceries just like the rest of us. Inflation at 9%. And you have the audacity to say, hey, we made a mistake, now you pay for it. Nah, fam. Miss me with that. Miss me with that all the way. How I was raised in Chilton County is that if you make a mistake, you own up to the mistake. You don't expect other people to correct it. The mistake was on the accounting department, on the board of education, on the superintendent. It's their job to fix it, to correct it. I got love for educators. My mom is a career educator. Both of my sisters are teachers. I know how hard they work. But stuff like this is ridiculous. And it's been happening in my home county for the last couple years. This isn't the first or second incident. There have been things like this that have been popping up where teachers are not taken care of, where educators are not appreciated, where they're given outsized expectation and underpaid. And then we wonder why our schools and our education systems are crumbling and are ineffective. Maybe it's an issue of leadership. Maybe it's an issue of accountability. And I see it in local governments like in this story. I see it at the state level. And I see it nationally as well. Time to step up to the plate. Man up, answer some questions, and do your job. Because alumni like myself, we see you. We see you. Our next story in the world of politics, South Dakota legislators impeach GOP Attorney General over fatal 2020 crash. The South Dakota House voted to impeach State Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg for his involvement in a fatal 2020 crash that has prompted state lawmakers to seek the removal of their fellow Republican from office. In a 36-31 vote, it was that close. The man killed somebody with his automobile, covered it up, lied about it, drug his name through the mud in court proceedings. And it was still a 36-31 vote. Do better, Republicans in South Dakota. Ravnsborg was charged with committing crimes or misdemeanors in office that caused the death of a pedestrian. He was also charged with committing actions that failed to meet the standard of the Office of the Attorney General after the collision, including during its reporting and the resulting investigation. Republicans were almost evenly split, with 28 voting in favor and 31 voting against. 8 Democrats voted for impeachment. As a result, Ravnsborg was suspended from his official duties ahead of a Senate trial, which could lead to his permanent removal from office if a 2/3 majority votes to convict him. The House held its vote even though a GOP-controlled House committee found that Ravnsborg's actions did not warrant impeachment, which is absurd. Republican State Representative Will Mortensen, who filed the 2 articles of impeachment, said Tuesday's vote would create a precedent. Never before in our state's history has it been that a state official criminally ended the life of one of our citizens and refused to resign from that post, Mortensen said on the House floor Tuesday. I believe impeachment should be reserved only for grave and exceptional circumstances, and I believe that this is one. Our top law enforcement officer has misled law enforcement during the investigation of those crimes, Mortensen said. In a statement after the vote, Ravnsborg said, I respect the process, but I look forward to the Senate trial where I believe I will be vindicated. Ravnsborg pled no contest to a pair of traffic misdemeanors, y'all, linked to the incident which he first reported as a collision with an animal. He said he did not realize he had hit a person until the next day when he returned to the scene and found the body of pedestrian Joseph Beaver, 55. A judge fined Ravnsborg $500 for each misdemeanor. He was not ordered to serve any jail time. Last month, Republican Governor Kristi Noem dialed up the pressure on legislators to impeach Ravnsborg, repeating her calls for him to be removed from office. Noem applauded the House after Tuesday's vote. Today, the House of Representatives did the right thing for the people of South Dakota and for Joe Beaver's family, she wrote on Twitter. So, I believe that this story and our coverage of it is the reason why people take our show seriously as a news show. Because no doubt we are a different type of news show. We're quirky, we're offbeat, we have a good time, we're lighthearted. But we've been on this story since it first happened in 2020. And we've stuck with this story. And we've provided Emmy-worthy news coverage of a story that is a big deal, but the outside of the state of South Dakota has been little more than a footnote for mainstream media. And I don't understand it, because all Americans should care about government misdeeds and about injustice, and about people who use their position of power and duly elected officials that refuse accountability and that make a mockery of our laws. And you could spend the rest of the weekend looking, but you won't find a better example of those things than the behavior of one Jason Ravnsborg. And we call into question all the time on this show the motives, the policies, the actions of politicians, the way that they vote, the things that they say. We don't often call into question their character as a person. Because other than the last story, I don't typically know these people personally. But let me tell you something. Jason Ravnsborg is a poor excuse of a man. And you can go back, I encourage you to go back on previous episodes and check out our coverage of this story. But to give you the Cliff Notes version, Mr. Joe Beaver had broken down and was walking from his car to find help. top law enforcement officer of the state of South Dakota, Jason Ravnsborg, the AG, was on his way home from a political fundraiser. It's night. He's on a country back road. He's scrolling on his phone. Phone records show. The investigation shows that he was not in the center of the road as he claimed, but had swerved onto the shoulder. And he hit Joe Beaver. And he ended his life. And he proceeded on his way. He did call 911, told them that he thought he hit a deer, but that he was okay. Despite the fact that Joe Beaver's glasses were later found inside his vehicle. This man's head went through your windshield, partner. You knew what you did. Somehow he was allowed to come back to the scene the next day with the sheriff to search the area, where he happened to be the one to discover the body of Joe Beaver. Remarkably, he was then charged with misdemeanors, not felonies, even though his distracted driving had taken the life of another person, and he actively lied about it and worked to cover it up. So now the state legislature has held him accountable, thanks to the handful of Republicans and the Democrats who voted to impeach him. And we'll see if the Senate does the right thing and removes him from office. But you know where we stand on the issue. And you know that we'll keep our ear to the ground. And you know that we won't relent and we won't let up. Because this is wrong. This man should be in prison, not the top cop of a state. And I don't care what he's done for charity. I don't care what family he comes from. I don't care the money he has or the position or title that he holds. He was careless and reckless, and he took somebody's life, and he should be held accountable. And that's all there is to it. Our last story in the world of politics this week: Russia deployed trained Dolphins to guard Black Sea naval base. Satellite images show. That's right, my babies. We're about to cover Russia and Ukraine in a way that you won't hear anywhere else in the world. With its military manpower strained by the fighting in Ukraine, Russia appears to have devolved sea defense to a different mammal: dolphins. Moscow has deployed trained dolphins at the entrance to a key port in the Black Sea, apparently to protect a naval base from potential Ukrainian attacks, according to a review of satellite images by the commercial firm Maxar and the U.S. Naval Institute. 2 transportable dolphin pens were moved to the Sevastopol harbor in February, around the time that Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, according to analysis of the satellite images by H.I. Sutton, a submarine analyst who specializes in the use of marine mammal pens and wrote for the Naval Institute. The dolphins may be tasked with preventing Ukrainian divers from infiltrating the harbor underwater and sabotaging warships there, which sit just out of reach of Ukrainian missiles, he said. Okay, so question. A lot of questions, but question number 1. The dolphins may be tasked with preventing Ukrainian divers from infiltrating the harbor. Has Russia trained these dolphins to use their bottlenoses to attack human beings? Because I'm both impressed by that and terrified. I'm terrified. In an email to NBC News, Sutton said the dolphins were the most obvious type of mammal being used to protect the naval base in the Black Sea. I would train octopuses, though. You know my fascination with octopuses. And it is octopuses, not octopi, by the way, the plural version. I would train octopuses. Octopuses are aliens. I know that dolphins have a reputation of being very intelligent beings, but hey, we don't even understand an octopus, okay? They be throwing things at people. They be using trash. We've covered octopuses extensively on this show like no other. I would train octopuses. He added that these were most likely the same pens that Russia deployed to Tartus in Syria in 2018, where they used dolphins to counter enemy divers, retrieve objects from the sea floor, and perform intelligence operations. Perform intelligence operations? What are these dolphins doing, Vladimir Putin? What does Vladimir Putin know about dolphins that we don't know? Because as far as I am aware, we do not understand the communication of dolphins. We don't know what they say. We know that they have a language, they have different dialects depending on where they're from. It's very complex. We have not yet decoded it. But maybe Russia has? Is Russia out here talking to dolphins? Because I don't believe in the Red Scare. I'm not afraid of Russia. Vladimir Putin can get it too. In Alabama, everybody got a gat. We armed up. We all got that thing on us. Okay. But dolphins? If Vladimir Putin can talk to dolphins, I have drastically underestimated the abilities of Vladimir Putin. A spokesperson for Maxar Technologies, who provided NBC with the satellite imagery, said that he agreed with the analytic assessments made by our partners at the USNI. Although the Sevastopol naval base is not Russia's largest in the Black Sea, it is crucial for the military given its proximity to the southern tip of the Crimean Peninsula, which Moscow annexed in 2014, illegally. A senior Russian military commander said last week that the country's goal in the conflict is now to seize full control of southern Ukraine, as well as the east, forming a land bridge to Crimea. This battle for the Donbass in eastern Ukraine is the second phase of Russia's war after its failures around Kiev and the north. So Russia, in addition to bombing civilians and starving out entire groups of people who they're refusing to allow to evacuate, in addition to committing war crimes and moving on major cities in Ukraine, including the capital, with tanks and fighter jets and arsenals, are now using trained dolphins. I mean, I don't know that we have anything like that in the works in our military. I guess we could employ the Miami Dolphins, but their defense isn't very good. This is some real Ace Ventura type stuff right here, and I have a hard time believing that this is real life. I started to put this in the paranormal news because of how freaky it is, but it's been a while since I've given an update on the war in Ukraine, mostly because I just don't know what to tell you. It's still happening. Vladimir Putin is still a crazy man. My prayers and thoughts and good vibes still go out to the people of Ukraine who are fighting valiantly. And now Russia is employing trained dolphins. Yo. We got to end this war. I don't know that the $40 billion that we are sending over to Ukraine is going to help if Vladimir Putin can talk to dolphins. What is his plan? What is he really trying to do? And are mermaids real? Trained dolphins. My goodness. That's all for the world of politics. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Patriots trade quarterback Jarrett Stidham to the Raiders. Nick Saban denies Bama violated rules to get transfer wide receiver. Ohio State lands top 2024 QB prospect. Memphis GM Zach Kleeman is the youngest to win NBA Executive of the Year. The NBA debuts new trophies honoring Bird and Magic. And finally, Tom Brady reaches a $350 million deal to broadcast with Fox after his NFL career is over. All right, let's take a look at the NBA playoffs, which are in the thick of things and underway. On our last episode, episode 38, we ran through the NBA bracket and gave you our predictions here on In the Shed, how we saw things going. Let's take a look at how we've done. We correctly predicted the two play-in games with both the Hawks and the Pelicans advancing in the East and the West. And in the first round of the playoffs, we gave you the Heat over the Hawks, the Celtics over the Nets, and the Bucks over the Bulls, but we missed in picking the Raptors over the 76ers in the East. In the Eastern Conference in the first round, for me, there were really two main stories, two things that caught my eye. One was the defense of the Miami Heat, particularly against Atlanta's Trae Young. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you are well aware that I am a Trae Young fan. I talk all the time how he's one of the more underrated players because he happens to play for Atlanta. He's the only player in the league the last 2 seasons to be top 5 in both points and assists. And I have gotten a lot of heat and a lot of, no pun intended, backlash on Twitter the last couple of years for making the claim and being willing to die on the hill that Trae Young is a better overall player than Jason Tatum. And I'm here to confess to you this Friday morning and to ask for your forgiveness, because apparently I was wrong. You see, I knew that Jason Tatum was an elite scorer. But my thing is, what else is there that he is elite at? Trae Young, on the other hand, is an elite scorer, but also an elite passer, an elite ball handler. In my mind, last year in making the conference finals and playing so well in Madison Square Garden, winning on the road in Game 7 in Philly, he showed that he's a player that elevates his team. And again, I say, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'm not always correct. Usually I am. Not always, but usually. And in this instance, I was wrong. So, Celtic fans, I accept all of the heat, no pun intended, that came my way. And I think it was justified because Jason Tatum in this playoffs this year has really shown that he is more than a scorer. His defense has really improved. He's shown an ability to lift a roster that doesn't have the talent as some of the other elite teams to a high level, finishing second overall in the East and even in the playoffs this year. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat's defense gave Trae Young fits. Trae Young, who averaged over 28 points a game in the regular season, was held to 15 points a game. He couldn't hardly get off a shot against 54-year-old PJ Tucker. I mean, if you have a forward guarding you who's like 109 years old, you would think being an elite scorer and ball handler like Trae Young, you would be able to blow by him and get to your spot in the lane, get to your step back, hit some shots, and Trae Young could make nothing against him. And they had plenty of guys that they could throw at him. Jimmy Butler took his turn. Kyle Lowry didn't play most of the series, but when he's out there, he can guard Trae Young. And then even Bam Adebayo on a switch can do a good enough job. The Heat gave that man trouble. And Atlanta should have been a lot better than they were this year. They should have been a 4 or 5 seed. They had plenty of depth and plenty of talent. They waited until the All-Star break to start playing good basketball. So they put themselves in this position by having to play the number 1 team in the East in the first round. But even so, I thought the Hawks would take 2 or 3 games from the Heat. The Hawks were a very good home team, but the defense of the Miami Heat has been impressive and has been stifling and looks less like the Heat team from last year, more like the Heat team from 2 years ago that made the finals. And Jimmy Butler in the playoffs is just a different cat. During the regular season, he's kind of up and down. Some nights he's on, some nights he's off. He doesn't shoot the ball particularly well. When the playoffs start, that man kicks it into gear. And his insatiable desire to win makes him a dominant playoff performer. So in the East, the 2 stories for me were the defense of the Heat in the first round and the ineffectiveness of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the Brooklyn Nets. I predicted the Celtics to win. I told you guys the Celtics win this series because they have better team chemistry. They actually play defense. In order to win in the NBA playoffs, you have to have depth, which the Nets do not. You have to play defense, which the Nets do not. And you have to have ball movement, which the Nets do not. Even so, I did not expect the Nets to be swept. I thought with two elite offensive players like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving that they would put the team on their back, that they would score the ball to a level that this series would go 6-7 games. It would be back and forth. And instead, the Nets got swept. And it's an indictment on Kevin Durant because he played poorly the entire series. He couldn't get a shot off. He wasn't able to get his own shot. He wasn't able to create for teammates. He underperformed. And it's looking more and more and more like his decision to trade Steph Curry for Kyrie Irving, to trade Steve Kerr for Steve Nash, to trade the Bay Area for Brooklyn might be the worst trade in NBA history. Kevin Durant decided to do his own thing. Kyrie Irving was popping off saying that we don't even really need a coach, that me and Kevin can do this, hey, you got swept. You got swept in the first round. You got swept as the 7th seed. You lost both games in front of your home crowd. You had your GM trade away all of your quality depth, all of your young players, some of your draft picks in order to have star power, in order to have Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and you failed. It amounted to nothing. Culture still wins, and Brooklyn has a culture problem. In the West, we gave you the Suns over the Pelicans. We were correct there. The Warriors over the Nuggets. We had that right. We gave you the Mavericks over the Jazz. Correct again. But we missed in picking the Timberwolves to upset the Grizzlies. And what stuck out to me about the first round of the Western Conference playoffs was the performance of the Minnesota Timberwolves, because Anthony Edwards is a lot better player than I thought he was. He's a legitimate NBA star. But I have to agree with Charles Barkley's assessment of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've never seen a dumber team. And I don't mean that those guys are dumb as people or individuals. I mean that their basketball IQ is on the level of Forrest Gump. I'm not a smart man. No, you're not. Because never before have I seen a team that outplayed another team for 75% of the series and then lost in 6 games like the Timberwolves did. Because they outplayed, make no mistake, they outplayed Ja Morant and the Grizzlies for 75% of that series and still managed to lose in 6 games. So far with the playing games and the first round, we are 8-2 in our predictions. Our bracket is looking pretty healthy. Tune in to us, because apparently when it comes to the NBA, we know what we're talking about. So currently in the East, it looks like this. The Heat have eliminated the 76ers last night, and the Bucks lead the Celtics 3-2. And I got to tell you, talking about a culture and how culture wins in the NBA, if you want to see that played out, look no further than the top of the Eastern Conference with the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, and even the Miami Heat. Because Pat Riley is a professional at constructing a roster. And Eric Spoelstra is a top 3 coach in the NBA, and that's whether or not Greg Popovich is a part of the equation. Eric Spoelstra is a top 3 coach. Playoff Jimmy Butler is elite, and the 76ers are a mess. James Harden last night scored 11 points in the first half, and I don't think he scored again. He took 2 shots in the second half. The 76ers, I know they didn't want Ben Simmons, who refused to play, but they traded away Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks to get James Harden for this. And after the game, James Harden, when asked about his only taking 2 shots, said, well, we just ran our offense, the ball didn't make it. You're the point guard. What do you mean the ball didn't make it back to you? You had the ball in your hands. You were uninterested. You were impotent. You were not just not elite, but you were ineffective for the entire series minus 1 game. I don't know if James Harden is washed. That's the narrative right now. I don't know if that's the case, or if maybe he just doesn't want to play with Joel Embiid. Maybe he just doesn't want to be coached by Doc Rivers. Maybe he and Daryl Morey have had a conversation in the back room about bringing in another coach, maybe one who's available and interviewing for jobs, Mike D'Antonio. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. If D'Antonio gets hired, then you know what's up. You know why James Harden phoned it in. And if not, if Doc Rivers keeps his job, don't be surprised if James Harden is on his way out of another town. Because if you thought Philly fans were hard on Ben Simmons for passing the ball one time in crunch time against the Hawks, what are they going to do to James Harden, who passed the ball every single time in an elimination game at home? And look, you got to give props to Joel Embiid. He is a competitor like James Harden is not. And he played through what I can only assume is an excruciating injury, having an orbital bone fracture. That's not his fault. That's not his fault that he had that injury. But at the same time, there's starting to be a book about Joel Embiid, and it's not good. Because in crunch time, in deciding moments of playoff series, the 76ers' best player is routinely out of gas or injured. Now, I'm not saying it's his fault that he's injured. I'm just saying we've seen this happen before. Another thing that we've seen happen before, and something that he deserves criticism for, is the way that he handles it after they lose. I get that you're a competitor, but for the second straight year, Joel Embiid has sat in his exit interview in front of the media and thrown his co-star, his leading teammate, under the bus. Last time it was with Ben Simmons. This time he threw James Harden under the bus, saying that he didn't know why he wasn't aggressive. They needed him to be aggressive, that he just wasn't choosing to be. And then talking about how much respect he had for Jimmy Butler and how he wished Jimmy Butler was still his teammate. Look, all of those things very well may be true, but that's not the way that you handle things as a professional or as a teammate. That doesn't win people over or make friends. That doesn't create to a good culture or good chemistry. Joel Embiid is a terrific player. He was in better shape this season. I think that he was the MVP. The Joker put up fantastic stats. Giannis was dominant for a lot of the season, but Joel Embiid, to me, was the MVP. He had a great year. He's a great player. He's not contributing to the right type of culture. There's questions about his playoff performance, about his greatest ability being his availability, and about his leadership. And there's questions about Doc Rivers. Because, again, Doc Rivers is handed a team with a lot of talent, and it doesn't really amount to very much in the playoffs. And he has circles coached around him by Eric Spoelstra. And Doc Rivers' defenders will point out what he did with other teams that had less talent, that he's won a championship, blah, 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 blah. What have you done for me lately, Doc Rivers? I agree. When he's given a team that is the less talented team, he often exceeds expectations. But can he manage superstars in today's game? Can he help lead the type of culture necessary to win a championship? Can he keep a team together? Will he even be the head coach next year? What does Daryl Morey do? He's got decisions to make. I don't think Joel Embiid is happy with James Harden. Are you going to let James Harden walk? Are you going to pay him a ton of money when we're not even sure at age 32 if he's still got it? And are you bringing back Doc Rivers? Philly is a failure. They've had the talent the last few years to contend in the East, and they continually go out at home in the second round without even showing a lot of effort. In the West, the Suns and the Mavericks are all tied at 3 games apiece. That game is going to a Game 7 in the desert. And the Warriors lead the Grizzlies 3-2, with the 6th game happening in the Bay Area tonight. And the Suns don't look unbeatable. They were the best team all season long in the league. They had the best record by far. Chris Paul makes a tremendous difference on any team that he's a part of. Monty Williams is a great coach, NBA Coach of the Year. Ayton is talented. Devin Booker is a star. They have pieces there. But the Mavericks have Luka Doncic. And Luka Doncic is a game changer. The way that he controls the game, the way that he draws fouls, the way that he gets teammates involved, the way that he lifts the roster has been an incredible thing to watch. The fact that the Mavericks are in a Game 7 and have a chance to eliminate the Suns and to make the conference finals. Have you seen their starting lineup? Jalen Brunson, he's a good player. Dorian Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell, Reggie Bullock. Do those sound like starters on a championship-level team? They're good. Look, they're good role players. But when looking at the two rosters between the Suns and the Mavs, one of these things is not like the other. And yet they're going to Game 7. Luka's been phenomenal. And the Warriors had a chance to eliminate the jawless Grizzlies. And they lost by 39 points on the road. I've never seen a Golden State team get punked like this team got punked. I mean, in the third quarter, halfway through the quarter with their starters still in the game, they were losing by 55 points, double nickels. Draymond Green was waving a towel, dancing around to whoop that trick. They better bring it tonight. They had something like 24 turnovers in that game. They better take care of the ball. They better hope that Clay and Steph shoot the ball. Jordan Poole shoots the ball a lot better at home. Because what they don't want is a Game 7 in Memphis. The Warriors can mess around and not take this thing seriously and wind up out of the playoffs when they are a championship-level basketball team. The first round of the playoffs, they look like the best team in the association. And now they need Steph Curry to be Steph Curry. He's got to be more aggressive from the jump. He can't let the game come to him when Game 7 is on the line. He's got to tell Clay to take a step back. He's got to tell Draymond to get me the ball and get the heck out of the way. He's got to be more assertive early in the game and force his way if they want to be the team that they should be. I love the NBA playoffs. I can't wait to watch the game tonight to see what's happening. I've lost like 35 or 40 followers on Twitter because of how much I live tweet the NBA playoffs. So if NBA playoffs are your thing, follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Chances are if there's a game on, I'm watching and I'm tweeting about it. But I got to tell you a quick story before we move on. We're going to talk NFL draft. Going to hand out some grades. But before we do, I got to tell you a quick story. I was talking about the Mavericks roster and Dwight Powell. It made me think of a time in college. I went to a small school, was on the basketball team, quit the team. Always wanted to play college basketball. It was just too much. I had a bum knee, was trying to get adjusted to life in college, ended up quitting the team. But had friends on the team, went to the games, one home game there in the front row, and I heard the other team talk to a teammate. One person on their team talked to a teammate and call him Dwight. So the entire game, I was that guy. And I made it my goal to personally heckle Dwight. And I just called out things to him, just complete nonsense. Dwight, hey, Dwight, nice try, Dwight. When he'd go to the bench, I'd be like, Dwight, where you going, Dwight? When he's sitting on the bench, we want Dwight. When he's at the free throw line, ooh, good try, Dwight. Like just the whole game. Just that annoying, over-the-top, ridiculous fan that everybody hates. And a few times he looked at me, pointing at like I was in his head. Like Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook, LeBron would have had me kicked out of the game. Like I was in this man's head, not even cursing at him, not even saying anything personal, just saying his name 5,100 times. And then after the game, which our team won, and Dwight was very ineffective, by the way, I walked out of the gymnasium, and Dwight was waiting on me. Hey, I'm built like a praying mantis with a beard, okay? Dwight was 6'8". And he was waiting on me. I had to slip into the crowd like Jesus and just disappear, just head out of there because this man was going to curb stomp me. So be careful. Be careful, my people, my tools, when you out there heckling. You just never know what's coming your way after the game is over. All right, so that's the NBA playoffs. Let's talk some NFL draft. I did watch. I made notes. I did some investigation. The top 10 picks went like this. The Jaguars, with the number 1 pick overall, picked the defensive end Trevon Walker out of Georgia. I know that he was rising on draft boards late in the process, but it's kind of a head-scratcher to me, to be honest with you. I watched Georgia play a lot of football games this last year, and Mr. Walker was inconspicuously absent for a lot of those games. Didn't really have a giant impact for Georgia. Will he all of a sudden be an elite player at the NFL level? He definitely has the athleticism and the build, but I think it was reaching, and that tends to be what the Jaguars do in the draft. The number 2 overall pick, the Lions picked defensive end Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. I thought that was a fantastic pick. 3rd overall pick was Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback from LSU. He went to the Texans. Solid enough pick. I might have gone a different direction if I was the Texans, but he's going to be a good NFL player for years. The 4th overall pick was Ahmad Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, the cornerback that was drafted by the Jets. To me, Sauce Gardner was the best cornerback in the draft this year, and the Jets did a good job picking him up. The 5th overall pick was Kayvon Thibodeau, the defensive end from Oregon. He was selected by the Giants. That was a good pick. At number 6, the Panthers took tackle Ikem Ekwonu from NC State, and I never understand what the Panthers are doing in the draft. Been my team since Chris Winkie was the quarterback, and I struggle to even root for them or to even care at this point. Why didn't you pick any tackles when you had Cam Newton in his prime? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. With the 7th overall pick, the Giants picked tackle Evan Neal from Alabama. It's hard to argue with picking an offensive lineman from Bama. The 8th overall pick, the Falcons took wide receiver Drake London from USC. That was a reach. Drake London is 6'4", has some athleticism, some speed. In my estimation, he was like the 5th or 6th best receiver in this year's draft. I just think there were better options for the Falcons. I think that they're hoping and picking potential over production, and I'm never a fan of that in the NFL draft. Watch the tape. Pick the guys that played the best at elite level in the college game. The 9th overall pick was tackle Charles Cross from Mississippi State to the Seahawks. So now that you traded Russell Wilson, you're going to provide a quarterback with a little bit of protection. It's a head-scratcher. This was like a bird finger from Pete Carroll to Russell Wilson, and I don't understand it. Do they need offensive line help? Yes, but you just had one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league for years, and you let him get beat up like I was about to by Dwight, and I don't understand it. And the 10th overall pick was wide receiver Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. He went to the Jets. I don't know what the Jets are doing. Garrett Wilson was not the best wide receiver on Ohio State's team. Maybe he'll be okay in the NFL. Again, he was the 4th or 5th best receiver. I don't get those 2 picks, the 2 receiver picks in the top 10. All right, let's hand out some winners from this year's NFL draft. Our top 5 winners, the teams that I thought had the best overall drafts this year. Our draft grades always look different. Here on In the Shed of the West, we take a look at all of the picks made by the team. We look at quantity and quality. And we make out our list. It's always different than the list that you see put out there by ESPN, by Fox, by all these other places. Number 5, we had the Houston Texans. I thought the Houston Texans did a good job this year in the draft. They had 9 picks. Like we said, they picked Derek Stingley Jr. 2nd overall. They picked Kenyon Green, a guard from Texas A&M, at 15th. I thought that was a good pick. And then they picked John Mechie III, wide receiver out of Alabama, and Christian Harris, a linebacker out of Alabama, both players that can plug in and play right away. The Houston Texans have a long way to go to be close to a competitive professional football team, but I thought they had a solid draft from start to finish. A couple guys they might have picked a little too high, but they picked a lot of guys that can compete for starting jobs on day 1, and I have them at 5th overall. At 4th overall, I have the New York Giants. Yeah, not the New York Jets. Everybody has the Jets up there on their draft boards. I had the New York Giants. Look, the Giants had 11 picks. They picked Kayvon Thibodeau 5th overall. They picked Evan Neal from Alabama 7th overall. I think Kayvon Thibodeau was an excellent pick. I think Evan Neal will be solid to good. And then in the 2nd round, The Giants picked Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver from Kentucky. I'm going to tell you, I love that pick. Wan'Dale Robinson is a utility player. He's a player that can do a little bit of everything. He can catch screens. He can go deep. He can catch the ball across the middle. He can take it from the backfield. I thought that was a creative pick for the Giants. They have a lot of places they can put him on offense. And then I even like what the Giants did later in the draft. In the 5th round, they picked Micah McFadden, a linebacker from Indiana. They picked DJ Davison, a defensive tackle from Arizona State. I think both of those were very good picks. I think that those were solid players that can help upgrade their defense and get playing time from day one. I thought the Giants did a solid job. They were number 4 on our list. The number 3 team this year in our draft grades that we are handing out is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens had 11 draft picks this year in the draft. They didn't do a lot that was splashy, but they had a lot of solid picks. The Ravens are all about business. They are a professional organization. They do a good job in free agency. They do a good job in developing their players. They have a good coaching staff. Their front office is always excellent. They're just a team that is well run, and you saw that show up in their draft this year. I thought they had 2 very good picks in the 1st round with Kyle Hamilton, a safety from Notre Dame that helps fill a hole for the Ravens defense. And they also picked Tyler Linderbaum, a center from Iowa. I thought he was the best center in this year's draft and is going to be a plug-and-play player from day one. In the 2nd round, they got David Ajabo, a linebacker from Michigan, who I'm very high on. And they even have an offensive tackle from Minnesota and a cornerback from Bama in the 4th round that I think will play immediately. The Baltimore Ravens, nothing spectacular, but a very smart draft nonetheless. I have them at 3rd overall. Number 2 overall in my top 5 winners of this year's NFL draft, I have the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans had 9 picks in this year's draft. 18th overall, they took Treylon Burks, the wide receiver out of Arkansas. Absolutely, this is an attempt to replace A.J. Brown. Build and play style is very similar. I don't know that Treylon Burks has necessarily the same top-end speed or that he will be the same player at the NFL level, but I thought it was a good pick. A little bit of a reach, but a good pick nonetheless. He will fit their system and what they try to do on offense. In the 2nd round, the Titans picked Roger McCreary, a cornerback out of Auburn. I think he's the 3rd best corner in this draft. Very underrated player. He was a lockdown corner for Auburn, an all-SEC level type player. And then they got an offensive tackle from Ohio State in the 3rd, another solid pick. And then they got the pick that was talked about the most, Malik Willis, the QB from Liberty, who slid to the 3rd round. All along the way, we were told about Malik Willis's strong arm. We were told about his athleticism, about his good character, how he was potentially a 1st-round pick, how the Pittsburgh Steelers were very high on him. And he slid to the 3rd round because he is a little bit of a project. He's not NFL ready to start day one. He did not play in a pro system in college. He's got some work to do on his mechanics. But he's a tremendous talent. He's a hard worker. He's a good kid. I think it was an awesome selection for the Titans. I think it gives them a hope for a future. It's clear that Tannehill, the answer at quarterback long term, he's a solid player. He's not a great player. He never has been, never will be. He has a ceiling. And Malik Willis' ceiling eventually will be higher. I thought Tennessee had a very good draft as a whole. And the team that I thought had the best draft overall this year was none other than Dan the Man Campbell and the Detroit Lions. And I got to say, it was so incredible to see the Lions have a competent draft. Because so often you see the Lions make picks, you see them make moves in free agency, and you just wonder, do they employ anyone that actually watches the games? Like, they have been for years the exact opposite of what the Baltimore Ravens are, and that is well run. That is intelligent. But this year, they did a phenomenal job. They got Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan, a hometown product. He's going to be a very impactful player on their defense. They got Jamison Williams, a wide receiver out of Alabama, who has a world of talent and speed and size. They got Josh Paschal, a defensive end out of Kentucky, a very underrated player. They got Kirby Joseph, a safety from Illinois that I really like. And then I even like their pick in the 5th round. They got James Mitchell, a tight end from Virginia Tech. I got to see him play a couple times this year. He's not a prototypical star tight end in the NFL, but he is a player that will be able to contribute in the near future. A little bit of a project. He'll need a year or two to get acclimated, but I think he's going to be a solid player for the Lions. So I really like what the Lions did. Those are my top 5 winners in this year's NFL draft: the Houston Texans, the New York Giants, the Baltimore Ravens, the Tennessee Titans, and the Detroit Lions. What do you think? What teams do you think had the best draft? Who messed up the most? I would love to hear from you. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let us know what you think of our rankings, what we got right, where we messed up. I had a good time putting that list together, and I hope you enjoyed it. And that is our news for the world of sports. Now let's switch to the news in the world of the paranormal. And our first story takes us to Hollywood. Yeah, we going to Hollywood. Megan Fox clarifies she and Machine Gun Kelly consume each other's blood for ritual purposes only. Again, I say to you, Megan Fox clarifies that she and Machine Gun Kelly consume each other's blood for ritual purposes only. And I gotta be honest, I feel like we don't even really have to read the article. We will, because that's how we do things here on In the Shed. We are transparent with you. But yo, why would anybody think that drinking Machine Gun Kelly's blood is a good idea? That man does not appear clean to me. That's a bad idea, Megan. And I know you was in that Transformer movie, and I've always thought that you were a cool person. But now I question everything I've ever heard about you and your decision making. And I love that it says they clarify. She clarified that they only consume each other's blood for ritual purposes, as if that makes things at all better. Megan Fox is explaining that blood drinking comment about her and Machine Gun Kelly. In her engagement announcement on Instagram back in January, I didn't know they were engaged. Congratulations, I guess. The actress caught some fans by surprise when she shared that the romantic milestone included a moment when I said yes, and then we drank each other's blood. Hey, shawty, I've been married for almost 9 years now, and we happy. You ain't gotta go there. I gave my wife a giant diamond and put it on her finger and said, hey, would you spend the rest of your life with me? And she said yes, and then we gave each other a kiss. Wasn't nobody out here drinking each other's blood. Like, I think you taking your vampire fandom a little bit too far. I get it, you team Edward or you team Jacob or whatever, but hey, that's just gross. And Dr. Fauci's over at the CDC might want to have a word with you, because we on the tail end of a global pandemic and you out here consuming each other's blood. But does it get rid of COVID? I don't. When asked to clarify what she meant, who did the asking, the cover star of British Glamour's April 2022 issue explained. So I guess to drink each other's blood might mislead people, or people are imagining us with goblets and we're like Game of Thrones, drinking each other's blood. It's just a few drops. But yes, we do. We consume each other's blood on occasion for ritual purposes only. What rituals are you involved in, Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly? Is this why you are so bad at hip-hop music, sir? Is this what you have resorted to after Eminem has ruined your rap career? You now have to drink the blood of your almost spouse, whose last name was that of a wild dog. Fox continued, I read tarot cards and I'm into astrology, and I'm doing all these metaphysical practices and meditations, and I do rituals on new moons and full moons and all these things. And so when I do it, it's a passage, or it's used for a reason, and it's controlled where it's like, hey, let's shed a few drops of blood and drink it. She added that fiancé MGK, aka Colson Baker, is much more haphazard and hectic and chaotic, where he's willing to just cut his chest open with broken glass and be like, take my soul. And none of us are surprised by that revelation, and Marshall already took your soul, sir. When asked if that scenario actually happens, Fox answered with a laugh. It does not happen, let me tell you. Maybe not exactly like that, but a version of that has happened many times. Elsewhere in the British Glamour interview, the star who met Baker while making the movie Midnight in the Switchgrass said that her musician fiancé is literally my exact physical type. Wow. That's the most shocking part of this whole thing. Even more so than the drinking of the blood is the Machine Gun Kelly is her exact physical type. He's built like me, but with like pink hair and more tattoos. Huh. She also explained why she feels that she's been manifesting him since she was 4 years old. I'm also 4 years older than him, so I think I made him. My thoughts and intentions grew him into the person that he is, who knows what he would have looked like or what he would have been like if it wasn't for me, said Fox. Megan Fox is a psychopath. That's what I'm learning. Like, hey, you've spent too much time in Hollywood. Like, I know people that read tarot cards or that are into mythology or that do astrology or that pay attention to their horoscopes and do stuff that I might not do or might not agree with, but hey, your exact physical type is MGK. And you drinking that man's blood for ritual purposes? That's some real freaky stuff. And I think you might need to have your blood work. You might need to see a doctor is all I'm saying. Wouldn't hurt to see a psychologist at the same. Maybe you can have back-to-back appointments, Megan. I'm really reconsidering that whole wise as a fox thing, because it doesn't seem like it's a good idea to drink blood at all, really, but especially the blood of Machine Gun Kelly. That's nasty. From Hollywood, we go to Colorado for our next story. Alleged bleeding statue in Colorado associated with Ukraine. Miracle is a term overused and misused in the media, in sports, and especially in religion. While there's little dispute that a true miracle should be something that can't be explained by natural or scientific laws, few events actually qualify. While a miraculous recovery from a disability could be psychological, a limb that is cut off and then grows would have had few denying it was a medically impossible miracle. That bar has to be set extremely low when bleeding statues are called miracles. But that's what we have today in Colorado, where a woman claims her statue of St. Michael the Archangel, the patron saint of Kiev, Ukraine, appeared to bleed from its head on the day Russia invaded that country, and continued to bleed until the blood reached the demon Michael was depicted standing atop of. The Catholic News Agency reports that Alicia Martinez of Broomfield, Colorado claims her 30-inch tall statue of St. Michael, that's a short angel though, 30 inches. He's not even 3 feet tall, y'all. That's a short angel. Began oozing a dark red liquid on February 23rd. A video posted 2 days later shows the liquid in a shiny state, in a dried state, and seemingly being blotted with a paper towel by Martinez and leaving a reddish mark. She claims the liquid oozed for over a week until it reached the demon under Michael's feet, something foretold to her by a nun, or possibly Megan Fox. Call Megan Fox up. She'll take care of the blood right away. She'll just come on over to Colorado on her private jet, and she'll just lap it up, just like the wild dog that she is. Megan Fox just drinking out here, just drinking everybody's blood and drinking it from a statue, angel, and I digress. While other people interviewed on the news and many social media commentators called it a hoax, possibly a money-making one, Mark Haas, public relations director for the Archdiocese of Denver, said this on March 7th. The Archdiocese has just recently been informed of this claim, and we will investigate. I was waiting for his quote to be like, hey, you don't believe it, but it's happening. And his quote was, hey, we're going to look at it. Matthew Schmaltz, an associate professor of religion at the College of the Holy Cross, says the Catholic Church can rarely endorse weeping or bleeding statues as miracles because they're so easy to fake. He He references 2 cases of statues that wept blood, one in Canada in 1986 and another in Italy in 2006, where the blood turned out to be that of the statue's owner, or possibly MGK. It don't say that. I couldn't help it. Other scientific investigations have shown how a porous steak can be placed in a liquid ahead of time to absorb it. The liquid then leaks out of the pre-made holes. In 1995, a bleeding Madonna statue was witnessed by 60 people, including the local bishop, but a DNA test showed the blood to be from a male, possibly the statue's owner. Often, the statue is merely secretly squirted with blood, water, oil, or another liquid. Oil can be mixed with a solid fat and rubbed on a statue's eyes or face. It will then appear to run when the temperature rises to melt the fat. That's very clever. The Catechism of the Catholic Church sets a high bar for miracles, but the Church is not above recognizing the benefits of questionable miracle events. In August of 1920, during the Irish War of Independence, newspapers in Templemore, a city suffering from bloody killings, reported the religious statues in a shop, and in some homes began bleeding. Soon there were reports of medical cures, and a truce, albeit short-lived, was negotiated between the IRA and Crown forces as a result. While the Catholic Church took a position of extreme reserve on the bleeding statues and alleged miracles, a local parish priest was widely quoted as saying, "If it is a prank, it will fizzle out. If not, why should I stop it?" At least one Templemore statue was indeed a prank. One bleeding statue was broken open, and inside was an alarm clock connected to a fountain pen inserted with sheep's blood. Whoa. At certain times, the clock would somehow bump the insert and squirt blood. Which brings us back to Alicia Martinez and her bleeding statue of St. Michael, patron of Kiev, or Kyiv. I think it's both. Will it be explained? Will it inspire anyone, restore their faith, or convince them to get some? Can it cause a ceasefire in Ukraine? Probably not, because Putin got trained dolphins. It looks like a hoax, but if not, just don't call it a miracle unless it gets smashed open and the pieces glue themselves back together. Yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting claim, that there is this statue in Colorado that is connected to the war in Ukraine that is apparently, allegedly, out here bleeding. Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody. If you understand that reference, you are my people. Hey, but even if you don't, if you're listening to this show, I assure you, you are my people. Yeah, I watched the video. It's not entirely convincing. I do think things happen that are outside of explanation of science. That's why we cover paranormal news on this show. I don't know what to make of the statue. Most likely it is a hoax. I have never heard of some of the creative ways that people hoax bleeding statues until reading that article along with you. But I would love for somebody to investigate. I would love to know why this is doing the thing that it is allegedly doing. And if it could lead to any good when it comes to the war in Ukraine, that would be fantastic. Yeah. From Colorado, we go to Kumasi, Ghana. Kumasi grabs Snake Girl. You heard that right. Snake Girl. The adage that wonders shall never end was demonstrated at Tafo, a suburb of Kumasi, yesterday morning, when a woman believed to be in her late 20s allegedly turned into a snake. And I'll just say, they don't mean metaphorically, like she not out here cheating on her husband. They mean like this lady turned into a literal snake. The information virtually caused a stampede at the Tafo District Police Command when residents trooped to the scene to catch a glimpse of the snake woman. Abina Agawa, a native of Mampong in the Ashanti region, turned into a big black cobra at about 7:30 a.m. at Tafo Mile 4. So she just out here on the highway, just turning into a cobra at 7:30 in the morning. Like, at least let me have some coffee first, you know what I'm saying? The incident, according to eyewitnesses, unfolded at a culvert located in front of the Maranatha Kingdom Faith Ministries, a local church in the area. An eyewitness, Adelaide Yoboa, wife of the pastor in charge of the church, told Daily Guide, "I was at home when I heard people shouting that there was a snake in front of the church. Alarmed by the shouts, Mrs. Yoboa said that she decided to come out and find out what was amiss, and to her surprise, she saw an extremely large black cobra crawling slowly in front of the church. I just want to point out that the eyewitness who saw a lady turn into a snake's last name has the word boa in it. The witness's name is Mrs. Yaboa. Yaboa Constrictor. Like, hey, are we sure that she's not the snake lady? According to her, the large crowd which appeared at the scene as a result of the incessant shouts attempted to kill the snake, a development which saw the snake seeking refuge in a culvert. Determined to kill the mysterious snake, the pastor's wife noted that the unwavering crowd decided to pour hot water into the culvert to force the snake out. Man, they really want to kill this snake, huh? I would have been like, hey, the snake is gone. I'm not alarmed anymore, but they really want it. I mean, a cobra is poisonous. They're just going to kill it. Few minutes after the hot water had been poured into the culvert, Mrs. Yaboa said that a wretched-looking woman emerged from the culvert to the utter shock of the multitude that had gathered there. When the people shouted that the snake had turned into a human being, the woman angrily responded, "And so what?" the frightened pastor's wife claimed. So the snake went into a hole or a ditch, and they poured hot water down there. And a lady crawled out, and their brain immediately went to, hey, the snake has turned into a lady. Why didn't their brain go to, hey, there was a lady in that hole? Are you okay? We just poured hot water on you. Are you all right, ma'am? Are you homeless? Are you hungry? Do you need some water that isn't boiling hot? And then her response, though, was, and so what? She added that the crowd became convinced that the woman was indeed the snake that entered the culvert when she began wiggling her body like a snake after emerging from the culvert. Or maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, but maybe she was wiggling because she was uncomfortable from the hot water that you just poured on her body. She disclosed that there were visible burns on the body of the woman after emerging from the culvert, a development which suggested that she was badly affected by the hot water that was poured into the culvert. Again, totally seemingly a normal thing if you had hot water poured on you, but I digress. The pastor's wife said when the woman was interviewed after she had come out of the culvert, she indicated that she was not a snake and that she decided to enter the culvert because she did not have any place to sleep. See, I was correct. I have solved the mystery. When asked for her location, Mrs. Yaboa said the woman told them that she was a native of Mampong who is married to one Lauren and has 2 children, and that she came to Kumasi for business. Fearing that the woman could be attacked by the angry crowd, the pastor's wife said the Tafo District Police Command was called in to come and whisk the woman to the station for protection. Police officers at the station had a hectic time controlling the crowd that besieged the station to catch a glimpse of the woman. Realizing that the crowd was overwhelming them, the district police commander, Superintendent Kwaku Bua, called for reinforcement from the regional police command. The crowd only dispersed after the reinforcement from the regional police command had arrived and taken the woman to the central police command for protection. Speaking to Daily Guide, Superintendent Bua said that it was untrue that it was a snake woman, stressing that nothing of that sort was possible. He disclosed that information reaching his outfit revealed that the woman was a deranged person who had been brought to a prayer camp in a suburb of Kumasi. The district commander disclosed that the woman had become mentally challenged after she gave birth to her second child and that she usually left her home at Mampong for unknown destinations. Superintendent Bua observed that the woman was being detained for protection from the angry and superstitious mob. Within minutes, news about the said strange happening had reached every corner of Kumasi as radio stations thronged the station to telecast live reports, a development which made the story the most topical issue in town. Yeah, so this one is pretty cut and dry, and actually very unfortunate. I picked this story because I thought it was a strange claim and a pretty funny event, and it actually turns out to be very sad. Because this was a lady that needs professional help, that is struggling with her mental health, and for reasons unknown crawled into a ditch, maybe to get out of the heat or to take a nap, and she had hot water poured on her, and then a bunch of townspeople that wanted to stone her to death because she had turned into a snake. That's when superstition gets out of hand, my babies. I feel bad for this lady. And I'm going to stick by my theory that the real snake woman is Mrs. Yaboa. She should be labeled a snake woman because she has boa in her. No, but she seems like a good lady because she did not go with the superstitious crowd, and she worked to support and protect the lady who was struggling. So good job to you, Mrs. Yaboa. And townspeople of Kumasi, hey, chill out. Chill out. If your faith is leading you to try and take the life of people because you think they have turned into a snake, maybe reevaluate your faith. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to take my advice. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. And from Ghana, we go to the near past for our last story. The War of the Worlds incident of 1938. It was October 30th, 1938, when a Martian spacecraft landed on a farm outside of Princeton, New Jersey, launching an attempted conquest of the Earth. But the Martian invasion was not real. Very important detail right there. People reacted with shock and fear to a CBS radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds. The hour-long fictional fright produced by 23-year-old actor Orson Welles, I had no idea he was so young when this happened, touched off a real drama. Radio listeners panicked, with some fleeing their homes and motorists clogging up roadways trying to escape. Radio listeners around the country feared an extraterrestrial invasion that never happened. The following day, a headline in the Johnstown Tribune read, "Mass hysteria hits nation at broadcast of Martian invasion," which has a good ring to it. They were very good at headlines back in the day. The radio drama is still talked about 83 years later. Bo Moore, longtime radio voice and host of the local show Laurel Highlands Now, said Wells's broadcast was brilliant. As far as I'm concerned, Orson Welles was one of the most creative minds of the 20th century, Moore said. This is what put him on the map. This is what made him famous. Mr. Moore has never tuned in to In the Shed with Wes Anderson, or he would have said, as far as I'm concerned, Orson Welles and Wes Anderson are the most creative minds of the 20th century. I'm just giving myself too much credit right now. The broadcast, done in a news-style report, was a radio adaptation of The War of the Worlds, an 1897 science fiction novel penned by H.G. Wells. The suspense built as listeners were told that a Martian spacecraft had crashed on a farm in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Unleashing poison smoke and armed with a deadly heat ray, they began their conquest, only stopped by a disease rather than by guns and bombs. The program combined orchestra music and spot news bulletins. Those who were channel surfing and happened upon the radio drama failed to hear the disclaimer that the show was fiction, creating panic in some quarters. The International News Service published a story from Salt Lake City in which a telephone operator at radio station KSL, local outlet for the program, said that a puzzled woman called and, when informed that the Martian attack was only a radio drama, cheerfully remarked, "Well, if it doesn't do anything else, it'll make a lot of people pray." Typical Mormon. A United Press International report said that in Indianapolis, an unidentified woman ran down the main aisle of St. Paul's Episcopal Church crying, "The world is coming to an end." The congregation was hastily dismissed because if the world's coming to an end, what do you need to be at church for? Apparently, St. Paul's Episcopal Church. INS reported that a New York man named Samuel Tisman said, "My nephew phoned me frantic with fear. I turned on the radio, heard the broadcast, grabbed a few belongings, and ran for the elevator. When I got to the street, there were hundreds of people milling around in panic. Most of them ran towards Broadway." Because, hey, if you're about to get up out of here, catch a Broadway play first is the theory here. They were going to see Hamilton, and they figured they did not need tickets on this particular night. Louis Winkler of the Bronx, great-grandfather of Henry Winkler, the Fonz, said he tuned in when the broadcast was half over. "I almost had a heart attack," he declared. "When the Secretary of the Interior was introduced, I was convinced. I ran out into the street with scores of others and found people running in all directions." Wait until they hear about COVID. The story goes on to say that police were amused when some people claimed to have witnessed the disaster. "What do you mean it's just a play?" a Brooklyn man shouted over the phone. "We can hear the firing all the way here, and I want a gas mask. I'm a taxpayer." "You, sir, are a male Karen." Another INS report said one Bronx man called police headquarters announcing, "They're bombing New Jersey." "How do you know?" inquired Patrolman John Morrison. "I heard it on the radio," stammered the man. "Then I went up to the roof and I could see the smoke from the bombs drifting over New York. What shall I do?" "You should move to the country because, hey, that's just pollution and it's all over the big city." That's what I would have told him. According to an INS story with a Pittsburgh Dateline, a man reported to a newspaper that he had arrived home to find his wife with a bottle of poison in her hand screaming, "I'd rather die this way than like that." Oh my gracious. Also from INS, this reported with a Dateline of Des Moines, Iowa, Senator Clyde Herring of Iowa declared today he would press for more stringent federal regulation of the airwaves. In Washington, Frank R. McInnish, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, announced that he would investigate at once. He said he had received no complaints, but that the commission could investigate without having received complaints. That's why nobody likes you, FCC. That's why. Apparently, the broadcast was quite realistic, he said. Subsequent investigations found that most radio listeners either didn't hear the broadcast or understood that it was a fictional drama, and that the newspaper of the era overstated the fallout. Still, Wells himself said that he made it real. "I can't imagine an invasion from Mars would find ready acceptance," he said when asked if he pranked the country, according to History.com. Decades later, however, Wells admitted, "The kind of response was merely anticipated by us all. The size of it, of course, was flabbergasting. Moore believes something similar could happen today. I think that we have many sources of news, like In the Shed with Wes Anderson, which people find that identify with their own personal beliefs," he said. "People are quite often fed stories that are exaggerated or aren't necessarily true, unlike In the Shed with Wes Anderson. A lot of people believe what they want to believe." Moore said the legend of the War of the Worlds broadcast continues to resonate. "I see it as brilliant art," he said. "And I also believe as time passes, the legend of this story has grown." So that is the story of the War of the Worlds incident of 1938. I thought it was something that was really interesting and worth covering, A, because it's hilarious, the reaction that people had. B, because it really changed media. It changed the way that the television and radio and social media, it affected all of that decades before those things even came to light. And it kind of gives us a glimpse into how fragile our society is, how fragile our minds are, of what happens when we are convinced that things are going sideways. And the guy quoted in the article is correct that there are a lot of news sources today that just give you what you want to hear, that focus on outrage, that focus on keeping people angry and directing that anger, that use information to manipulate people. And it's why I think that programs like ours are important, and why I think that podcasts and independent news and real journalism are succeeding where cable news programs are failing and where MSM is failing. And it's why I encourage you not to just silo yourself off and watch Fox News or CNN or just listen to this show, but get you a sampling of what's out there. Take a look at an issue from all angles. Learn to think critically. Learn to understand the thinking of those that you disagree with vehemently. Because that's what protects you from things like what happened in 1938. And hey, if it did come on the radio that we were being invaded violently by some alien race, I can't say that I wouldn't have a similar response to some of these people. I don't think I would go to Broadway necessarily, but I would probably load up my family in my truck and I would go somewhere. I would do something. And this was 1938. Like, these people didn't have the view of the world or the universe that we do now. They didn't have information at their fingertips like we do now. And as I researched this topic, I actually found out that the panic was not as widespread as I was led to believe. There were pockets of people that really made rash decisions, that were really freaked out, but most people understood it was a play. A majority of people didn't even hear it to begin with. But it's still really interesting and really cool and really worthwhile to study when it comes to the topics of news and media, and even that from a paranormal bent. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 39. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some sports, and investigate together the Loveland Frogman. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!